I'm Mary Wing Soares, and this is Transparency in Government. Today with me is our Superintendent of Schools, Scott Laliberte, and we know we always do this right before the election, and we're talking about the budget today. I mean, not the budget, the warrant,
Yes.
which is now the articles on the ballot.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So I know we've talked about this before, you and I certainly personally and also out in public with the school board, but if you wouldn't mind just going through one more time why we have to have a difference between our default budget and our operating budget.
Right. Well, what we do when we construct the budget is we take a look at all of our existing programs, we look at all of our academic programs and class offerings and the support systems that are necessary for us to offer for our students, and we build a budget off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, right now we're in a pretty challenging time in which our enrollment historically has been trending downwards. We're now in a period where the enrollment is coming back up at our elementary schools. And so what we're really trying to do here is build a budget that funds the programs up to the expectations of our community.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for us to do that, sometimes we have to be able to go above the default budget. Default budget is the previous year's approved amount minus one-time expenditures plus contractual obligations. And as we know, there's been a change even in that calculation 2 years ago. So the default budget of today is actually not what the default budget was 2 years ago.
Right.
So when you factor all of those things in, what we want to do is bring forward a responsible budget that funds the programs at the levels that our community expects.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, by virtue of the structure of our town, we need to have a budget. So
Sure.
that's why the default budget is there.
So the default budget is does not include certain items, though.
Correct.
That have to be paid every year by the school district.
Yes.
And up until 2 years ago, those items were allowed to be part of the
Right.
school district and the default budget.
Right.
Okay. So those include busing, which we have to pay for.
Yes.
The trash pickup that we have to pay for.
Any increases in our existing contracts
Right.
over last year's amount are not covered in the default budget. That's one of the changes. And you're right. You're right. It is things like transportation. We will have to pay that bill.
Right.
Trash pickup is one. Utilities, we anticipate about $100,000 differential this year. Just as is the case with residential customers, our electric bill is going up, our water and sewer is going up, and we anticipate about $100,000 differential there.
So what I don't understand is the fact that the state legislature is the one who brought this down
Yes.
on us and on other districts. It's not just Londonderry that's having to face
Everyone,
this
yep.
situation.
Everyone.
I get, buses, because the
Mm-hmm.
school district is the one who contracts with the bus company. But
Right.
electricity, we have to have electricity. It's not
Right.
like we can decide to not have electricity. And
True.
so that, it seems to me, should have been always allowed to be included in that default budget, and
Right.
it's not. So
Right.
it does not make sense. And so in order for us to include those things in the future, we have a warrant article on the ballot now
Yes.
that has to do with our charter. And how
Yep.
will, if that passes, how will that change things?
The charter amendment is something that's being proposed by town and school alike. And what it would do is it would bring our definition of default budget back to what it was prior to 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us feel like the legislation that was introduced that changed the default budget didn't take things into account that it should have, just as you've suggested. Now, what we have the flexibility to do we operate under a town charter, we have the ability to change that because
Mm-hmm.
we're not necessarily beholden directly to the state. Our town charter mirrors SB2 at the state level. But we do have the freedom that most other towns don't to make a decision to change that. And what this would do is this would take us back to the previous calculation method, where things like increases in the electric bill and that sort of thing would be able to be included.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I think it's very important for people to understand that even though there's a delta or a difference of about $400,000,
Mhm.
that is not the original amount that you had asked for. You'd asked for a little bit more, and so you've
Right.
already made some cuts in what you know you're going to
Right.
have to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And hopefully the school board budget is the one that passes.
Right.
But if the default budget passes, you have to live with it, and which means
Right.
you're going to have to make further cuts in order to be able to pay the bus, the trash, the electric, the water.
As we construct the budget, cuts are made at each level. The departments build their budget first, then it's built into a school budget. All the schools have theirs. They then bring it to us, and we build into a district budget. At each of those steps, reductions are always made.
Sure.
Because whenever you're constructing something, you're always going to look to try to do the best and most complete job that you can, and that's why we have those layers built in.
Right.
So there have been a considerable number of reductions that have been taken throughout the course of the process. And including as you saw, the school board.
Right.
Yep.
So, we had over 8,000 voters come out for the national election, for the
Sure,
primary.
sure.
It would be wonderful if that number came out for this, upcoming town election, because I think the town election affects people much more
Right.
than the national. But anyway, on to the other items that are going to be on the ballot. We have 2 contracts that are going to be decided this year.
We do.
Okay.
We do. Article 3 and Article 4 are our two of our 4 union groups. Article 3 is for our custodians, and Article 4 is for our support staff. And support staff would include anyone from administrative assistants to one-on-one aides who work with students with disabilities. These are non-certified positions. These are positions, as you and I both know, having our roots in schools, they make the schools work.
Sure.
They're among our lowest paid, and they are among our hardest working. So these 2 groups, we did enter into negotiations with both. We thought we arrived at a very fair resolution, there are some salary increases in there, in particular for the support staff. They are underpaid for their position and for their labor grade. If you look at other schools and other
Right.
districts in the area, we have a hard time holding on to staff. We do turn over quite a bit.
My own experience is that 2 people have just left in the last month because they were offered positions in another school district where the salary was higher.
Yes.
So it's frustrating to us because these are the great people,
Yes.
and they're the people that we really need. You're right; they are the backbone of our schools. They are the ones that certainly support everybody,
Right.
custodians and the assistants. So those are those 2, and I know that there are always 2 school board members who negotiate this with the
Yes.
unions. So they are watching out, and
Yes.
one of them was Steve Young. We know Steve is a Yankee, frugal Yankee, manager. So I think this is a very fair situation.
We certainly made an effort to make it fair for the taxpayers as well as for our employees. No
So
doubt.
then you have articles that are not going to, except for the expendable maintenance trust, have any tax impact because they are just accepting federal funds and then paying them back out.
Yes, Article 6 is in particular it's the one we talk about all the time, and I travel around quite a bit talking about the budget, and this is one of the ones that we always say, this is actually voting for us to accept money. That not only is there no tax impact, there is actually a tax advantage. And it's about $3.1 million that we receive from the federal government. And one of the things that we are responsible for in the regulations is we are responsible for gaining community support to accept them.
Right.
So really, Article 6 is a vote for us to get money. And a lot of times when we see people vote no on that, it's always interesting as to why they would make that choice. We can't tell anyone how to vote,
No.
and we just encourage you to vote.
Right.
But that said, as we look at Article 6, that's actually revenue positive. So
And then Article 7 is the expendable maintenance trust.
Yes, yeah.
So that one does have a tax impact.
It does have a tax impact because in essence, what this does is this levels out the expenses over time. I think this was a very wise move by people many years ago in town to create these trust funds that in essence allow us to take something, and the example we always use is a roof. Replacing a roof on a building is a very expensive proposition. Boilers and heating systems, paving, and that sort of thing. Instead of coming to the taxpayers and saying, we're going to replace a roof at a cost of $800,000, what we're able to do is take money and put that aside each year, build that up, and then use those funds for that purpose. And I think what a lot of taxpayers appreciate about that is because it is a trust fund, it is for that specific purpose only. So we can't say to that, well, we need another, $50,000 for a completely different purpose. You can't. It's dedicated only for that purpose. So it can't.
And the
be used for
capital
anything else.
reserve is the same situation?
Right. Yep. None of that's not money that can be used freely or at the will of the superintendent or anything like that. The board has to vote to expend and to support anything that comes out of that.
But the equipment capital reserve fund is something that comes out of the leftover, if there is any
Yes.
leftover.
Right.
in
In
the budget.
Article 8, it actually says this sum to come from the June 30, 2020 fund balance available for transfer.
Right.
That's something that we do. That if there are any unencumbered funds at the end of our year, those funds would go into that trust fund, that capital reserve fund, again for that purpose, and that would defray the expenses that would otherwise have to go in the general fund budget.
So I do want to give the business manager a plug here because you just went through the audit and the auditor said that they were very impressed with how little there is actually left over, meaning that
Right.
you are crafting budgets that come very close to being exactly what you need.
Right.
And that says a lot when you're talking about $78 million for you to be able
Right.
to do that,
Right.
So, I know it's not just the business manager that's doing that, but
Right.
he's certainly advising to make sure that we stay
Right.
in that leveled funding.
He and his team put a tremendous amount of work into making sure that we ask for what we need, and we need what we ask for,
Right.
for sure.
And so this just helps us, though, if there is any leftover funds, and you're asking for 150,000 of those leftover funds. Now, some people might say, well, why aren't you giving it back to the taxpayer to change, to lower the tax rate?
Right. In essence, it does reduce what would be future tax burdens by having it expended on items that would have to be purchased in the next year or budgeted for in the next year. That's how we look at it. It's a little bit like a savings account and going to a savings account instead of using your credit card or something like that. We certainly try to be responsible in returning taxpayer money wherever it's appropriate, wherever we can. But if there's an opportunity to realize some savings or to purchase something in this situation with equipment for the school buildings, to purchase something ahead of time that we wouldn't have to purchase later, then we don't have to then ask for that again. So return it and then ask for it back.
And Article number 9 is about the District Technology Network Infrastructure Capital Reserve Fund.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of talk, over the past couple of months about what the future looks like for technology in the district.
Right.
No decisions have been made as far as one-to-one in the high school.
Nope.
But this will help assure that should there be a situation where we have enough devices so that every person had a device, they would be able to connect.
Yeah, I think anyone who has used the network in the school systems over the last 3 to 5 years knows the speed in the development of process, not only just the devices themselves, but the content that you're accessing. The speed has increased exponentially to a point where what we had in place 3 or 4 years ago just couldn't keep up.
Right.
So even something simple like streaming video, teleconferencing, that sort of thing, we've gotten to a point where we couldn't handle it. Our network couldn't handle it. And that was one of the reasons why we felt it was important for us to introduce this idea of a capital reserve. The district's been, and the community have been very, very thoughtful in the past in using capital reserves and trust funds as savings accounts to ensure that, that different pieces of the network and different pieces of equipment could be maintained. We thought it was an appropriate thing to do for our technology infrastructure as well. The community agreed with us when they approved it last year. What we're hoping is that on an ongoing basis, we're not necessarily looking for the latest and greatest and flashiest piece of technology. What we want to make sure is that we don't fall behind again.
Sure.
That the network itself can handle the traffic that's needed in order for our students to be able to access learning materials. We don't want to see our district fall behind in that regard again. That's why you see a little bit lower amount this year than we did last year. Made some major upgrades last year, and we're a year or two away from really being in good shape.
Okay, and so you did, the district did work extensively at the high school last year and partly in the
Right.
middle school.
Right.
And now your goal is to finish whatever might need to be done in
Yes.
the middle school and now hit the elementary schools as well?
Correct. What we found is that the capacity needed, the bottleneck was greater at the high school, and it was the core switching. I'm not a technologist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do. I'm fortunate enough that I can ask a lot of questions in those meetings, and in essence, that's the way that I know our IT folks explained it, not only to me but to our community.
Sure.
Was that was the piece that was really slowing us down, was the central switching in the core infrastructure for the district. We made some considerable upgrades. Yeah, we have a little bit more to do, and you know, we feel like we can get that done with that 125,000.
Okay. You know, it's not something that we think of as far as the school district is concerned because we have bus contracts, and so we don't think that there's any vehicles that we need.
Mm-hmm.
But we do need some vehicles, and we do have some machinery that we have to keep up to date, right?
Right. Yeah. Building and grounds and maintenance, and we have a lot of needs. We have 200 acres of property to take care of. You know, almost 700,000 square feet of building. So
And do we take
a lot of
care of
needs.
the property ourselves? We don't contract it out to anybody that,
We don't.
no?
We don't. Not
Because the
at
town does,
schools.
the town contracts it out, they tell me.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we have lawnmowers and
We
things
do.
like that?
Everything from lawnmowers to
Excavators maybe?
bobcats. I don't think we go.
Oh.
We do actually. I believe we lease an excavator in the winter to be able to handle the snowbanks, because, as you know, they're quite large. in
Yes,
our,
quite high, yeah.
Yep. So we have to be able to push those back. But yeah, to your point, a lot of equipment is needed for us to be able to do that. We do have in our maintenance staff, we have electricians and HVAC people who do work across the district. We do a lot of delivery for our food service and that sort of thing. So we actually have quite a few vehicles running around between the schools and working on the property.
So on the town side, they moved the district charter amendment up to the second article. Is it going to be moved here, or is it going to stay here
it
as
stays,
Article 11?
Yeah. It does stay.
Okay.
It does stay at the end. And I think a lot of that as a longer article, I think that was the thought process, was just to have it at the end so that people, when they reach that point, could take a look at it. The language is pretty dense. There was a lot of time and consideration that went into that from our attorneys, and I know the town worked on it as well. And it can be a little bit confusing, but that's part of the reason that we're trying to get around to as many people as possible to talk about this and explain that really is what we're asking for here. Not asking for anything new or unusual. We would just like to go back to the original formula for calculating the default.
So we have, this is the only one that doesn't have a unanimous vote on the school district side.
Right.
We had a vote of
Right.
4-1.
Yep.
So, you know, I mean, I was at the meeting, you were at the meeting,
Mhm.
where the dissenting vote was.
Mhm.
And the concern is that if we have this amendment, it allows the school board to enter into contracts without having to ask it be voted on by the people. Okay, so just as you do the bus contract, you can't wait until March to make the bus contract, because you're negotiating it after
Right.
March, right? You're negotiating it like in May and June for the following years, or for the following 2 years,
Right.
3 years, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
The electricity, it's not something that you can say, well, you know, just turn it off for a couple of months, and then when March happens, we'll put it on the ballot, and if the people say that we can, it doesn't make sense for those types of things. But the one specific thing that the dissenting vote talked about was the district office.
Right.
And he did not want that to be able to happen again. Your thoughts?
I think, well, there are dozens of contracts that we enter into on a regular basis, and it could be everything from maintenance of some equipment to IT infrastructure. I'm stuck on that one because we just talked about it. But large and small.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that we have the ability to do and need to have the ability to do for the reasons that you've expressed. Is that there are times where we have to act in a timely manner. I think some of the disagreement, and I know I've certainly had conversations with people in town about this as well as within the school district, the disagreement about the school district office came back to that idea of timing.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some folks who felt like that needed to wait and that needed to be put onto a ballot, and there were others who felt like that was in the same type of vein that perhaps some of the other contracts that we enter into or should be considered in the same way. So it's sort of a fundamental disagreement about the district's ability to enter into contracts. I think each voter has to make up their own mind.
Sure.
and to act in accordance with their conscience. Obviously, we felt it was an appropriate decision to make. It was time sensitive, and it's been rehashed now for 2 or 3 years.
And I don't think it's going to go away until you come back to the middle of town.
We would love to come back to the middle of town. It was a decision that we made for the health and safety of our employees.
And that's what I was hoping to get to.
Right.
Because really, it wasn't a matter of that you weren't willing to ask the voters. It was it was a matter of you had data that showed you that people were getting sick year after year after year. And it becomes a liability to the district when you have a building that is causing people to be unhealthy.
Right.
So, you know, I just did want to get back to that one point. Okay.
That was the impetus of the decision.
Right.
I don't think anyone, we're certainly fortunate to be in a very nice building.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't what we were looking for. What we were looking for was a safe and healthy environment. That was something that we could go to in short notice.
Right.
And I think if any of us, if you offered us an opportunity to be able to be back closer to our students, I think we would all be glad to take that.
Well, and I think you will be.
Yeah.
I think that is something that you will work for the future.
It's part of that facility study that we're in the midst of right now.
And we also know that even though it's a 10-year lease, it can be broken.
Yes, it's 10 one-year leases, as I believe it's been put.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have that opportunity if something comes along earlier.
Sure. And then Article 12 is an easement request, which is simply you have a neighbor up in Sanborn Road
Yes.
who built a senior housing and needs the ability to be able to access.
This is one that we had to consult the attorney on because of that. The construction work that was being done has already been completed.
Right.
But by regulation, we have to present this to the voters and gain their approval. There is no tax impact. It was a very small easement. It was something that didn't disrupt the school, the North School, in any way, aside from maybe some dirt in the parking lot for a little bit. And what we've been advised by our attorney is that we have to present this and have it approved, and if it's not approved, it will be back next year and ask again, and that continues even though the work's already been completed.
So what benefit was it to the school district to grant this easement, though?
I don't know that there was any direct benefit to the district. There also wasn't any kind of a deficit. It really didn't impact us a whole lot. So for the most part, it was being a good neighbor and being a good fellow townsperson, and helping someone out who needed our help.
Sure.
And there really was no impact to the students. There was no impact to staff or to the building.
So. I guess it's really a moot point, because you're right, the building is already up, the parking lot's already there, but they're on the other side of the street.
Right.
So where's the easement?
It dealt more with a force main for their connection to the
So it's underground?
Sewer. It is underground, that's correct.
So,
Yep.
and you got, didn't your surface get repaid?
Part of the parking lot did get repaid.
So there was your quid pro quo.
Yeah, we would have liked to have them do the whole parking lot, but I don't want to be. I don't want to be. I don't want to
Well,
give
maybe if
in
it
the
doesn't. No, I'm kidding. All right. So then,
Sure.
we have a non-lapsing special article. We know that the asbestos is being dealt with
Yes.
on an ongoing basis, but it's
Right.
not anything that is hurting the children right now
No.
while they're in the building. It's
No.
just
In the process of the previous abatement. The previous abatement we had hoped would completely remove all asbestos. We did come across in the process of abatement, we came across some additional asbestos that was not in the plans, if you will, and it's going to be a little bit more for us to do it. Our hope is that once this particular abatement is done, we'll be free of asbestos in all buildings in the district, which, as you know, it frees us up from a tremendous amount of regulatory pressure and a lot of money.
Sure.
Yep.
And then create a revolving non-lapsing fund for self-supporting programs. So this town has to do the same type of thing. It's
Right.
where you take in money and you pay it out.
Correct.
It's just so that it
Correct.
can revolve through the system and help
Right.
your bookkeeping.
Helps our bookkeeping. We are able to maintain greater controls over the money that comes and goes from there. It's subject to the same accounting principles that our regular budget is. So what it'll mean is really a lot of the funding that passes in. As you know, we have a lot that comes in and then turns around and goes back out again from fundraisers and that sort of thing. And that's really what that's for, is to help us out on the accounting end of things, to ensure that all of our funds are being spent appropriately.
Right. Okay, I do just want to go back quickly to the budget, to your budget.
Okay.
Because even though it says $78 million, there's a substantial amount of money that is offset. This is not all taxpayer money, right?
Right.
There are funds that you get from the government, as we spoke about, not for the free and reduced lunch, but for
Right.
special ed programs, for there's income that you get from students that come from other
Right.
districts.
Right. Right.
They go to the high school.
Yeah, there are a number of different sources of revenue beyond just local taxes. We do bring in about $1.6 million a year in tuition revenue between Hooksett and our LEAP program, our summer programs. That's just one example. But yeah, there are a lot of federal programs, $3.2 million there. These monies come in from a variety of different sources, state and federal. So that also, if anyone wanted to really dive into that, the budget packet that we have online, it's under our business office tab. There's a whole sheet on revenues, and it breaks down where all of it comes from.
So the reason I bring it up is because I know when somebody looks at that $78 million, they're probably thinking that's coming out of my pocket. And some of it is, even though it comes from the federal government.
Right.
We don't pay state income taxes, we pay property taxes. So the money that comes back from the state is an addition to the property tax. You know what I'm saying? We pay our property taxes, some of that goes to the state, some of that stays locally. The state gives it back to us, so it's kind of like a rebate from the state, you know?
Right,
Even though
Right.
you're paying it, you're not paying it twice, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
right.
Okay,
Yeah, I see.
so I'm hoping people will appreciate that, even though it says $78 million, that's not the whole amount that you're gonna have to
Right.
raise.
That's our, yeah.
That's the
our
budget, but
General
if-
fund operating budget.
If you were just to put what you needed to raise from the town on here, that wouldn't be enough to run the school district.
Correct, yep.
And
as I
you
say,
wouldn't be
yeah,
able to spend the money that you get from the federal government and from the state, because you haven't asked permission.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of nuances to it.
right,
And for those who are interested, as I mentioned, we have a full budget packet is on the website. And it is all spelled out in there, the different revenue sources and how it breaks down and the impact on the tax rate.
okay.
So.
Well, I know we had some challenges getting this show in, and I do
We
appreciate you
did.
coming and taking the time to do this.
you.
We're taping like just before vacation, so I know both of our brains are there already. But this is a very important thing, and we do
Yes,
want people to
sir.
come out and vote and support, you know, our school district as they have in the past. I mean, I'm appreciative of the time that I've been here, and I've never seen them not support our schools. And I think we, you know, give it back to the town
Right.
too in our quality product.
Well,
So,
we certainly have a very hardworking, very talented staff, and have enjoyed great community support. You know, oftentimes I have to be Switzerland a little bit, and
Sure.
we do encourage people to participate in the process and to vote their conscience.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So the election is March 10th. You will also, I know this isn't my It's Your Choice show, but you will have the option to choose 2 new school board members because our incumbents are not running. And there are 3 people that you can choose from. So please, I would encourage everybody to come out and vote. And if you have questions about any of this, let Superintendent Laliberte know, or you can get in touch with the business office, or again, it's online, it's under the business tab, the whole budget and everything. So thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you
Thank you
for
very much.
watching. This is Transparency in Government, and I'm Mary Wing Soares.